Hi there, it's Jonathan Herps, founder and CEO of Scale Up Growth. Welcome again to my Business Focus series, where I chat with owners, managing directors, founders, and entrepreneurs of leading scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies. So today, actually, this is unique. This is our second dip. I interviewed Rod Lewis very early on in the history of this podcast. And he's very kindly agreed to come back and be persecuted again. So I'd like to welcome Rod Lewis, CEO and co-founder of Extracta. Hi, Rod.
Hi, g'day, Jonathan. And it's interesting, we have come such a long way since then because we hadn't incorporated very long before you and I first met. So, we were both new at it.
Yeah, and look, I'm really looking forward to hearing sort of where the journey's gone.
Sure.
But let's start with, what does Extracta do? There's a couple of businesses in there. How long have you been doing it, and wherever you are?
Sure. So Extracta is a business that we formed because our other business, which I'll talk about very briefly, needed high quality ingredients, Australian-made ingredients, to sell to the food industry. And we found that Australia was lacking in very high efficacy functional ingredients. And those, there's some available, but they're imported, and some of them are not. They don't give us the medical benefits that we're looking for. So my partner and I decided to create our own little business. That took a long time. And that became Extracta. And what Extracta does, it goes into typically farms and or processing industries, and whatever they're throwing away in terms of food, unused food, the stuff that, typically Woolies won't buy, but it isn't actually that. Whatever they're throwing away and can't use, we analyse it, and where we can extract value, we either get it for free, or now we're finding we're having to buy it because they see us putting value into it. For example, one of the people we use is a distillery up in Tweed Valley. They grow their own cane, so we can track and trace right back to the crop, to the plot of ground, which many consumers like. They squeeze it, squash it, take the juice for their rum and gin and stuff, and they throw away what we think is the healthy bit, which is the cellulose. So we get that, and then we process that, and that's one of our ingredients. So it's a very high quality, insoluble dietary fibre, no known allergens, a really high quality product. And if we do it according to the process we've developed, very high medical efficacy for some particular chronic health conditions. We go into Hunter Valley, and we're about to go into the Barossa to get the same process, but we take what's left over grapes. After the wineries squeeze the juice and make wine, they chuck away the skins and the seeds and all that stuff. Massive, massive value in that. Health value, and therefore commercial value. Red grape skins in particular have massive antioxidants, polyphenols that are known throughout the world to be very good for many different health conditions. So we get them for nothing. Figures crossed.
So when we spoke last, from memory, you were trialing on the back of a truck processor.
Yeah,
right there. So where is it at now?
Well, we've found. I'll go back. The reason, for those who weren't there, the reason the back of the truck matters is because we take seasonal ingredients: grapes, oranges, apples, pears, sugarcane, and other stuff. And they've all got different seasons. So if you want to keep your factory operating pretty much 12 months of the year to amortise the overheads properly, you either got to move it or transport the product a long way, and transporting the product's no good because you're transporting water, which is ridiculously expensive. So that was the concept of the movable factory. What we've ended up with now, the government, to our great pleasure, and we're quite proud to have earned a very significant grant, and we're collaborating with Queensland University. So they've built one factory up on one of the QUT sites in Brisbane. We get the cane that I mentioned from the distillery just south of the border, a couple of hours drive was that. And that's a fixed plant. Now we're going to move it to somewhere, but that'll do sugarcane primarily, and it will do some grape but mainly sugarcane. The other, we've just signed a major deal with Asahi, the significant brewer. They not only brew, but they do other drinks, and one of them, they're very big in orange juice and citrus juices. So, but they throw away 4,000 tonnes of peel every year. And so we've now put a hand up, we'll take that, we'll buy it from them, and we'll process it. Because we have to build a factory at their place. Otherwise, we've got to transport all of this peel. So I've spent this morning, in fact, finalising, we're going over there in a week or so to establish the site, and we'll also procure grape marc from Barossa. There's more grape marc in the Barossa than anywhere else in the country. So we'll be able to have this one factory which will deal with citrus, 4 or 5 different citrus stocks and grapes, and we'll produce from that pectin. Now, pectin is used as a setting agent in gels and jams and stuff. It's also used, a different grade is used for yogurt, for a thickening agent. Again, it's a extremely high quality soluble dietary fibre, and no allergens as well that people know of, that we know of. And it's widely used, but none is made in Australia. That industry left, I think it was, I used to run the Cotties operations, Cotties, jams and stuff, and I used to buy my pectin from Botany in Sydney. Well, that's all gone. It's all imported from China. So massive commercial opportunity to make it here and sell it from oranges and apples, in fact. It goes in one of the suppliers that I had at Cotties. He was an obsessive techie, like a mad scientist, lovely guy, and he produced his own pectin plant, small scale, which I've now managed to acquire. So we know how to make pectin, and we've got supplies of massive supplies of raw material. So therefore, we probably won't end up with a portable factory. I think way we're heading, we'll have a factory in the Hunter, factory in the Barossa, and a factory up north near the Tweed, and do part processing there to the point of drying it. Pardon me. And then it's cost efficient to transport to a central packing facility.
But tell me, who's your core customer, your best customer? I mean, there's two, isn't it? There's one of the supplier, you mentioned that already. And who's your core customer you're selling this stuff to?
Yeah, the core customer, the one is the other business that we run here, and that's the business that takes high quality functional ingredients and converts it into products for chronic health conditions. Company name is Medicane. The consumer brand, retail brand is Nutricane. One for diabetes, one for health, gut and bowel health, helping people be regular, older people, but also pregnant women have a problem with that. We've got one for chronic joint pain with collagen, and we've got one for inflammation. And so we've got 4 of them now. One more about to be launched early in that next year. So that's our first customer. We've got other customers, but that's one.
Give me the, I'm a type 2 diabetic. What's the one about diabetes? What's the name of the product?
Nutricane D. We did clinical trials at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, and we demonstrated that it reduces helps manage and control blood sugar, but importantly helps people lose weight, which is related.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. No, it does. I mean, I take it. I was interested in when we began that journey, as they say. I was diagnosed as being a marginal diabetic, and so I took the stuff. I've had it now for 10 years, and I'm fine. But I'm sensible. I don't eat all the silly stuff, not very often anyway. But I take this product twice a day. How it looks.
So listen, let's move on. We're coming out of we're out of the pandemic now. I think it's fair to say we're pretty much business.
Fingers crossed, we'll never come across.
To the point that in the next series of the podcast, I'm changing this question to how are you using AI, but I won't go there yet.
I'm not using it yet.
So of the actions you took during the pandemic, what stuck with the business, and what will remain with the business going forward?
Well, I observe, particularly in Sydney, where I'm based at the moment, the people are more relaxed in dress codes. That happened during the pandemic, in my opinion, because we were working from home, and eventually everyone got used to the fact that people aren't going to dress up. You know, the joke of someone on a suit, a shirt and a tie and undies down below, yeah, that was all very funny. But in reality, eventually everyone realised that you are at home. There's no reason, and 90% of your time you're on the phone. No need to dress. So, and that's, in my opinion, gone into business. Now, I'm a relaxed person rather than a more formal person anyway. And I think it's helped, in my observation, meetings be more personal. Today we're back to face-to-face, although a massive amount of video time has remained because it's time efficient. You know, it's great. If I go to a city meeting, I'm only in near Chatswood in Sydney. Still takes me, by the time I leave here, get into the city, there's best part of an hour. Yeah. And then the meeting and best part. So it's basically a morning or an afternoon. Whereas now, if I've got an hour meeting, it takes me an hour. So efficient. And that's kept, I think most people value that. And most companies, not all, it would appear, accepting the continuance of work, some element of work from home. And I've got sorry, Jonathan, I believe that we've got to meet face to face from time to time because people are people, but that can be less than once a week.
And you know, it's interesting. I'm on a charity committee for a charity called Anala, which is
Really?
Yeah, it's a we help people with mental disabilities. We had a charity lunch the week before last, and yeah, if anybody listening, thank you so much for all the support we got. We raised an enormous amount of money, but 480 people in the room. First time I've ever been to one of those in a long time. I reckon 95% of the men there were not wearing ties.
Yeah.
And that's a significant change. You know, it's really big.
Yeah, and I think it helps the personal interaction side of business, which is really, but you've got to, ultimately it's good if you can trust someone. It takes a long time to build trust up, but therefore you've got to be a little bit personal. And when you get that relationship going, it's helped us dramatically in Extracta because we've met people that we just get on with because we face to face them now.
Yeah. So tell me, what does future look like, and what do you see as your major challenges in the business going forward?
Look, the business is in a fantastic position. We've raised a lot of money, and we raised money, interestingly, most of it anyway, from people who see they're at the end of their career, and some of them are retired. So they've had time to reflect, and we're genuinely sustainable. There's a lot of greenwashing going on. We're genuinely the true article. No matter how deep anyone looks, they always come back with that. We produce Australian-made products and recreating a lost Australian manufacturing industry. And by the products are in demand and we can export them. There's not one thing that any of the investors have found that they don't really love. So we've been able to get funded, and we're out now for a significantly bigger raise. So that's been massively helpful. We've been able to get customers because of that story, and because our product, two reasons. Our products are Australian made, they're natural, and they're sustainable. But importantly, because of our manufacturing model I started to describe earlier, we can actually deliver cost effective with pretty much any other product on the market, still make a very good margin. So they like that. High quality in most cases, and at a competitive price. So that's, we just see growth. We see a lot of growth. And I mentioned before we started chatting on this interview that I went to a Food Pro show in Melbourne for the food industry 2 weeks ago, and unbelievable invitations are still coming to us from that show because of what we do. People want to fill and pack for us. People want to supply us what they're calling waste, and people want to buy the ingredients because they're Australian made and they're high quality. So no, we see growth. It's just
okay. So let's explore that a bit. Growth. That brings you challenges. How are you seeing that?
All
of that.
The problem, okay, I've noticed the grey hair. I've done this before. The problem that I've encountered I'm a very passionate guy, and so I want to drive it. And the problem with people like me is that we take on too much. So what some industries call initiative overload, and I am very conscious that I'm guilty of that at times. So that's something I'm cautious a bit. I've got a number of people that we've engaged either directly as employee or advisors, and they're charged with the mission of making sure that everything is challenged. Initiative, that's a real risk, and of course, related to that is working capital. Because when you're trying to do too many things and fight on too many fronts, then working capital cash flow is massively difficult. So they're the main things. I'm a huge believer in diversity, not because it's popular and all that stuff, but different opinions, young and old, different backgrounds, is terrific, but it does cause minor conflict, and that's got to be managed in a positive way. Conflict is good if it's well managed. In fact, properly managed conflict, you emerge stronger, no doubt in my mind at all. But you've got to manage it carefully. So that's one of them. Working capital, initiative overload, and making sure the human side of the business is being managed.
Thank you. So what do you think's been your biggest learning as a business owner?
I think it's I observe others, and I've been a consultant in consulting to people like me. One of the things founders get is overly excited when they have a win, and boast about it and grow away and even spend money because of had a big contract. And then, of course, a month later, the world has changed and the sky's fallen on them, and they even get to the point, some I've seen, getting quite depressed. So, I'm naturally an optimistic person, and I'm naturally a confident person in the things that I'm good at. And there's not many of them, but those that I'm good at, I'm very confident in. So I think I've learned to be measured when things go really, really well. And this week is a week things have gone well for us so far. I don't lose the plot because I'm being excited, and neither do my team. And when things go terribly bad, we don't slash our wrists. I was always okay at that, I think, but I'm now very honed at being even. And I think the other one is opportunities come to most people every week, but 99% of us don't see them, or if we see them, we don't do anything about delivering them. And I'm myself and the team got much better at recognising them and prioritising them, and then and delivering the ones that we think are really going to benefit the shareholders.
Right. Last couple of questions. The word successful. When you think of the word successful, who comes to mind? It's the first person that comes to mind, and why?
Yeah, you sent me that one. Thank you. It's really interesting, and I'm going to talk. When I was 16, I was I was a welder. I'm an arc welder by background, and I was quite a reasonable welder. I was welding, doing things. And in the shop that I was welding in, a guy came in who was a garbage collector, and he was, 60 at the time. I was 16, and he was the happiest guy I'd ever seen. And all these years later, I still think he was the happiest guy. And he used to boast that he was providing a service. He was happy because he was outside, he was exercising, whatever it was, but his day-to-day activities made him personally happy and paid the bills. And there's not anyone I've come across since then. That would be an exaggeration, but very few people seem to love their work that much. I like to think I do. What I do now is a hobby, and it happens to pay me as well. So hours are irrelevant. The more time if you like golfing, and more time you play golf, typically you like it, the better. I like doing this, and it's a hobby. And so success to me it's absolutely nothing to do with money, in my mind. It's to do with being respected by your peers, knowing that in your heart of hearts, you've actually done the right thing by others. And we know it, it doesn't always happen to some people. If you can spend your day doing what you want to do and someone pays the bills, that's success.
You know, Rod, you asked me a question before we started this, where do I think I make the biggest impact?
Yeah.
It was a really good question. I work on the theory of, and I'll do a lot of this with my clients to understand, and particularly the founders, because there's, the point you've made already is, I call it a different thing. I call it the shiny object syndrome. Founders and entrepreneurs, we can tend to rush at things. And one of the key tricks is having a balanced group around you, which is a visual point about, to perhaps rein you in, and refocus. One of the things I coach is for a successful founder, entrepreneur, is to have a chief of staff or have a chief operating officer who can keep, it's almost like jiggling the reins to keep the chariot in the right direction. But going back to where's my impact, I talk about unique ability. What are you really good at and what do you love doing? As it turns out, my three: coaching CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, building the intellectual property to help them, and thirdly, doing this podcast. And they are the three things that I now focus on. And they're the three things I won't give up. Everything else in my business, as you know, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to clap and it's going to get sent off to my EA and she's going to send it off to Vitaly, the video editor, in the Ukraine, and everything else I've delegated with people with different unique abilities. And it's a really, it's one of the hardest lessons to learn. And I love, by the way, your garbage fellow. I use a case study called the City Bin Company, and the City Bin Company is a company based in Ireland. I'm going to say Tipperary. It's not Tipperary, but somewhere like Tipperary. And they had, and the thing about it is the city they were in only had 65,000 people, but they had a very audacious goal that they wanted to get to 1 million clients, 1 million customers. And they achieved it by going to the Middle East. But it got to a stage that the owners had been so successful that they weren't enjoying it anymore. They sold the whole Middle Eastern business and went back to just operating where they came from.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important to do. I mean, I've had jobs that I didn't really enjoy, and I stayed too long. And my wife's smarter than me; she made me realise that. But now, I mean, we only do things that we really love doing. I mean, I'm running a business. I've got shareholders to give rewards to, and then all that stuff. But I like that. That's part of the buzz of doing it well.
Exactly right. Business books, podcasts you'd recommend?
Well, this one, obviously, John.
Thank you.
Look, I'm not a big book reader, sadly. I observe people. I stop people in the street. I stop people in supermarkets shopping with their kids, and talk to them about the products that I'm selling and developing. I network. I go to seminars and conferences, and been to 2 in the last 6 weeks, and talk to as many people. So I like to think I learn from others. There've been a couple of books. One I can't remember the name of, but it was all about the customer. It annoys me when I see founders or anyone talking about a business, and more than 50% of the time they don't mention a customer. That's what we're here for. Customers give the returns to the employees on the shelf. And so there was a number of books I read about proper customer management, not the stuff that you see with missions and vision statements that are wanky, real stuff. And there was another one that I used to get frustrated in meetings when I had a corporate job because you'd waste time. And the thing came out called the 1 Minute Manager. And it was all about focusing your attention to achieve something quickly, and that happened to be well focused on customer. So I guess that's what it is for me.
Yeah, and Kenneth Blanchard is the author of that book, and it's one of the it's one of the classics. I agree with you totally.
No, okay, yeah, it's very thin, good to read, and it makes a big impact.
The last question: any last piece of advice or parting words for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs out there?
I actually stand up on a stage occasionally and talk about this. I've got a lot of experience at it, and I enjoy it. And people foolishly ask me, and my overall advice is, if someone wants to get into being a founder, have a go, do it. One of the errors that, in my opinion and observation, is that many founders they actually think they're really clever, and they probably are really clever at something, but I've never met anyone that's clever enough at the broad spectrum of things to do it all. So I go out of my way, and I only work with founders who I believe accept that they're not going to be the right person to drive it to the 50 million turnover, or probably not. They might be, unlikely. I don't think I am. And they will accept advice from others, and they'll believe in themselves. So seek advice all the time, evaluate it, make a decision, and believe in yourself. And accept that one of these days you'll be out to pasture, if the business is to prosper.
Yeah, really good advice. Yeah, and it's a really good point. It's the point I made about unique ability. You can't do everything.
Yeah.
One of the things I work a lot with my entrepreneur clients is identifying when it's all, the first thing is getting the right team around you, doing the right things. And once you've got that, is get out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally agree.
Indeed. That.
Right, thank you. It's so good to speak to you again.
Good to speak to you, Jonathan. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, look, you're the only one I can say to, but I always enjoy these conversations on the podcast.
Me too. Thank you.
I'm going to challenge you to get into AI, so we might have a separate conversation then on.
Let's do that.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.